Danny Schaefer. He's an idiot.
All right. A special edition of DennyRadio Podcast. We've done a couple of these at 10 a.m. with my wife, and now we're doing one at 1 o'clock with Jerry Anderson, the franchise. We'll bring him on in just a second. A couple of things from this point going forward. We're going to have all of our podcasts start at noon. Why am I doing that? Well, because when the radio show starts in or around March 10th, Monday, on 100.7 The Ticket, it'll be noon to 3. So we're going to start conditioning all of us, including me, to start then. And so that's why we're going to do it. We're going to start at, noon and see where this goes. All right. We had lunch the other day. Thank you to the legend, the man, the myth, the franchise. Say hello to Jerry Anderson, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Denny, good to see you. And thank you. Denny, by the way, folks, he could have started this show at noon even today, but Jerry doesn't. I mean, it's 1 o'clock. I just got up. I'm an old retired fart. And no, that's not true. I've been up since 7-ish. No, 7:30-ish, 7:45-ish. Anyway.
That's the best.
Good to be with you.
Glad to have you here, of course. The best part about retiring from morning drive is the fact that I'm sleeping in. I got up. I went to bed last night by 10. I slept until 7. I mean, it was beautiful, and it was just I don't know, man. I just didn't realize how much sleep I had been missing. So I'm just thankful for that.
Oh, there's no doubt. In fact, when I heard your announcement, and when I heard you fess up that, I'm tired of the 3 a.m. alarm clock, I could so relate to that because I did some morning radio. I did some morning TV, but I did this much compared to your this much. I mean, my thing was I worked the other end of the clock, which has its own downside. Okay. So when I heard you say, I don't want to answer that 3 a.m. bell anymore, all I thought was, what took you so long to get to that point? Because I knew a long time ago, getting up at 3 a.m., that was not going to work for Jer.
Yeah, you did that when you were on Speedy, right? Were you ever on Speedy before morning drive? Somebody said that before TV,
you go back far enough, Denny. I wanted to get home by 3 a.m., not get up at 3 a.m.
There it is. But did you ever work at SPD before you did mornings?
Yes, I did SPD in the 70s, late 70s, before television. And then I had 2 more stints at SPD, both times as the morning person.
Okay, because somebody sent a question the other day when I was talking about you going to be on, and they're like, Jerry used to be on SPD in the 70s. I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's before TV. So your first media gig was radio? Oh,
yeah, I just loved radio. When I was at Bowling Green State University, I didn't take a television course. I didn't think that was on my radar. I loved television. I loved radio, though. I loved radio. That was my medium. I got a gig at the campus radio station, Rock and Roll and Requests, on Saturday night. And I thought, wow, they gave me that show. And then it dawns on me, the only reason they gave me that show because it was Saturday night and everybody else wanted to go out and party. But I thought, I'm going to be on the radio. So I did that at WBGU and I worked at WFOB's. That's a Fostoria station, but they had full-time studios in Bowling Green. I worked there. And then I got in at WSPD doing news and also I ran records from like 1 to 3 in the afternoon. That's back when we were playing records on AM radio, which of course, you look back at it and what were you thinking? That's what the station was doing. And they told me, you don't really have to say anything. Just run some records, make sure the commercials got played, and fill time until Paul W. Smith comes on at 3 in the afternoon. And then it was, so that was my SPD gig until Channel 13 hired me in September of 1980.
So 1980 is when your TV career took off. All right, cool. All right. If you have any questions for Jerry, put them in the comment section, and a bunch of people are watching. Jeff Lamb says, howdy, boys. Chad and Dan, and Nurse Terry and Pam, they're all, hey, hi, Denny and Jerry. So, all right. So when we did this
it was great seeing you and having having lunch with you, but I did tune in and I saw your show with your lovely bride, Sharon. And then I realized, well, he's going to have me on the show this week. You've gone from the pinnacle, Sharon, and you're already worked your way down to Anderson on, 3 days later. I'm a little worried about you.
Yeah, I would say I have no comment about that because my wife is watching in the other room. So why we?
Hi, Sharon.
Well, one of our viewers / listeners said, hey, why not talk to Jerry Anderson? So we're like, okay. And you and I were having lunch at, what is it called? Yep. Biaggi's. That place is wonderful.
Yeah. I told Terry you had not been to Biaggi's, and she's like, well, what? How does that happen? Yeah. Biaggi's at Levis. It's one of our favorite places.
Yeah. That place is nice. I'll go back there for sure. So, especially if you're paying. So, they wanted to know your thoughts on the inauguration. So, Jerry, what were your thoughts on the inauguration of our 47th president? Did I lose you?
That's
Are you there?
That you bring that up because this is maybe a surprise. Yeah, I'm here. I'm talking out loud. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. We must have some kind of internet glitch going on. I don't know if it's my end or your end.
It might be my end. I'm going to continue and see if any of this works. So you wouldn't believe I'm a news guy still, and I love the news, but I watched this. I didn't watch the inauguration. The most interesting thing to me was when they said a couple of days before the inauguration, President-elect Trump has decided to move the swearing-in ceremony into the Capitol. They'll do it in the rotunda. This hasn't been done for 40 years. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I was there 40 years ago. That was the inauguration. That was Reagan too, his second inauguration. And they sent myself, this would be Channel 13, myself and Jeff Slauson into Washington to do local coverage. And it was just so immensely cold that they canceled everything. So that changed all of our angles on what we were going to cover. But in terms of this inauguration, I count me among those. As much as I have historically loved politics, I'm just topped out. And it makes me angry. And you know what? At this point in my life, I don't want to be angry. So I didn't watch it. Sorry.
So you have no comment on anything that happened?
No, my comment was, I've been there before. I've been there when it got frozen up before. And I've been there. I mean, it's everything that you heard during the campaign is coming to fruition. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And there's nobody forcing you to watch any of it. Right now, the state of political dialogue in this country is such in the cesspool. Congress's approval rating is about my shoe size, and it should probably be less than that. There's nobody there that, I can't say nobody. Too few people there are actually working for the citizens, the voters, the individuals back in the district. They're following a political line, and that's both parties, and make sure they are following the money. That is to say, I always used to tell our young people at the TV station, hey, if you want to know how Marcy Kaptur, if you want to know how Bob Latta feel about something, just look into who is backing the bill. Okay. So if it's the American Federation of Teachers, that Marcy's going to be for it. If it's the American Bankers Association, oppose it. Bob will oppose it. Just follow the money. And I just think that's unfortunate. I miss the days where Republicans and Democrats could talk together, come to an agreement, neither side getting everything they wanted, but getting enough that they could live with it. And somewhere in there is where I think most of America is, and it certainly is where I am.
So being you've been to an inauguration, what is your best memory when Ronald Reagan was sworn in for the second time?
Okay. Try it again. I'm so sorry, folks. You buffered on me, and I missed your question.
Stinking internet. You pay your cable bill, Jerry? Did you pay your internet? What's your best memory of the inauguration?
Yeah,
let's go.
That inauguration, the thing that I remember most twofold was I was over on the Capitol grounds. We had our company back in those days, and this you don't find much anymore. Our company actually kept a full-time Washington bureau, 365 days a year. Our Washington bureau correspondent, Norm Wege, would feed all of the stations that were owned by our company. And so when we went to work there, our address was 400 North Capitol. I mean, we would set up shop there, and then to go to the Capitol and do interviews and the like, we could walk. We could carry our gear and walk. But on that cold inauguration, and nobody wanted to get out and walk. And one of the things, I was over on the Capitol grounds at one time, and my photographer said, "Hey, Jerry, I'm going to go back to the bureau and I'll edit that, send it to Toledo. I'll come back, meet you here. We'll shoot the next thing." He took off. That's fine. And I was there, and I was out there, and I realized right now I can't get a ride anywhere because all the streets are closed around the Capitol for security. And I get that. It should be. So they're out there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to freeze out here. That was, for just a brief period of time, I thought, well, I'm going to go into hypothermia and fall down. And it was stupid of me to be out there. And one of my favorite ever inauguration stories was actually the next one when George Bush got sworn in. And that was the 1,000 Points of Light inaugural speech. We were there for that. And then following Bush, we were there for Clinton 1. And this time I'm there with a photographer, I think Brian Jagodzinski. I'm there with Diane Larson. So they sent more troops to this one. We are walking to the Capitol for the inaugural speech. And there's a few people. They were on the sidewalk. And again, we could walk it from our bureau to the Capitol. We're walking, and Diane says, Jer, what? What? And she goes, look. She points over to the right. They're walking along with us. Had just a top coat on, not with anybody. Was former Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis. 2 people on the ballot to be our next president. And he got beat, obviously, by Bush. And Diane and I were like, wow. How quickly they forget. No security. He's walking alongside Jerry and Toledo, Ohio. And nobody was bothering him. Nobody was interrupting him. He was just private citizen. And it's like, wow, how far they have fallen in just 4 years. So there was the inaugural. And by now, our company had gotten it we got sold. Companies get sold. So we no longer had the bureau, the really flashy bureau, all the edit suites and all that stuff near the Capitol. Now our company decided to contract with some freelance satellite company. to uplink our stuff. And so at a given time, we are told to arrive at this location where all of these satellite trucks were. We have no idea who ours is. I mean, we had the name of a company, and some of the trucks had their company names and logos on the outside. And it's like, that's not us. Where the heck? I mean, we got to find somebody. We got to send a story back. We finally go to one that's kind of nondescript. We walk up, knock on the door. Yeah. Yeah, we're WTVG Toledo. Are you so-and-so? Yeah. Okay, listen, we got a story to send back. We got a live shot to do. Okay, where do you want to do it? And we got out, and it's like our photographer is trying to set us up. And he goes, no, I need to get you guys up. But we wanted the Capitol framed behind us. And so it's like, well, we can't. Man, this is as tall. We started looking around, and somebody had brought in planks of wood for these satellite trucks to pull onto, because otherwise it was grass below and they didn't want people getting stuck in there. We went around and we're all dressed up. I got the suit on, got the makeup on, doing all the stuff, going around pilfering wood. Diane Larson and Jerry Anderson stacking wood. And I'm like, this is such a joke compared to where I've been before, working with a really funny. We're out here brag, but we're trying to build a form for ourselves. And when we let Toledo know, by the way, we had to go searching for the satellite truck. Guy wasn't prepared for us, and we're stacking wood so that we can frame the shot. And our GM's analyzed, oh, you should have shot the wood. That was a good story. All right.
Really?
Okay. No, I disagree. First of all, when you go to these things, the story is never about you. It's not about you. It's about what you're there to cover. But yeah, little inaugural stories. And maybe I've just topped on it. I just didn't watch this week. So sorry.
So Chad, Hype Man Chad wants to know, what was your biggest story you ever covered in TV or radio?
Well, the biggest stories in terms of biggest importance to people are just what I think was the ones that struck me the most. And among those, there are really good, encouraging stories. I mean, our ability to cover, because they allowed us to, Tim Berta, after the Bluffton bus crash, the baseball team whose bus went flying off an overpass in Atlanta, landing on its roof. Several died. Tim was the worst injured among the survivors. And for his family to allow us in to do a story, I mean, that boy, when we first saw him, we were at the hospital when they finally got him up here from Atlanta. And they brought him down the hallway, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's got like this helmet on, because down there they had to drill into his head to relieve pressure. And so to protect that, he was in this thing, and his eyes were they were open, but the lights weren't on. He was just looking down and away. And what struck me, Denny, at that time was I had just sent, you can relate to this, I had just sent my daughter off to college, Ohio Northern University. And when we would go down Route 75 and get up 235 to head down to Ada, Ohio, where Ohio Northern is, you would go past some road, and it would say Bluffton, 3 miles. I think it was 2 or 3 miles. And so to me, it's like, well, Bluffton, I've not been to the school, but we go past that, and it's 10, 15 minutes from where my daughter is. And we send our kids off to college, and we pray to the Almighty that please take care of them. And my little girl is at college, and Tim Berta was at a college just down the road, and he was just going to play. At that time, the coach had actually asked him to help coach the baseball team, because Tim was also playing football. And to think that happened. And then we would, over the next several years, go back and update and chronicle Tim's recovery as a tribute to his own strength, his own courage. It's a tribute to the human body and the brain's ability to rewire and it become more functional again. He has written a book. He is teaching. It's an incredible story. That is one of my all-time favorite stories. And then one I was just talking about with folks the other day. There was a plane crash. I happened to be working on this July 4th because Jerry actually was an anchor who took his turns working some holidays. Others would not. That aside, I would get a phone call, and it was late. We had the fireworks downtown, and I'm at TOL for this one. And so it was right at our back door. I mean, we walked out and watched the fireworks. That's all great. And then we went in and it was between, I think, 10 and 11. We got a phone call. It might have been actually when I got off the air. It was late. It got a phone call from somebody said, "Hey, we're over here on Kelly's Island. There's a plane crash." Uh-oh. We just did that buffer thing again. Folks, I'm so sorry. Anyway, I made some phone calls to police stations over there, and they were actually pretty forthcoming. They said, "Yeah, we don't know. We don't have a lot of particulars, but yes, we are investigating a plane on takeoff from Kelly's Island crashed into the lake." Okay, a water. And that story became one of the most moving I ever did. The following year, I was at the Safety Council of Northwest Ohio Heroes Award. I emceed that for years and years. And they recognized a gentleman from Kelly's Island and told of his story. And when I heard it, I thought, I've got to do this story. So this is, they were down from the Lima area, Allen County, a dad and two sons, wrapping up Labor Day. They had been to some event. Everybody's getting ready to go back to school the next day. In fact, his wife and all the children had been at this picnic, and then they had to the school to set stuff up. And Dad said, "Hey, I want to go up and do a quick flight." And his wife said, "Fine." He goes, "I'll take the boys." And the oldest boy said, "No, I'm going to stay back." And the daughter stayed. So the two youngest boys went with him. And he flew them up to Kelly's Island, and they saw the glacial grooves and the stuff to see at Kelly's. And then after nightfall at dark, off in a plane. Now, let's talk to the gentleman who was honored later. He's sitting out lakeside with his wife in chairs. And he told me when we interviewed him, "Jerry, I saw that I could hear the plane take off." And he goes, "And you know how you can see the lights at the wingtips?" He goes, "I could tell something was wrong." He goes, "There's something." He goes, "I told my wife, there's something wrong with that plane." And he goes, "And I heard it, and I could see the lights, and I heard the into the water." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And it's dark, black, and he says, "And I just did what I instinctively. I went down, and I have this rowboat, and it's on shore. I'm having to pull the rowboat off." And he goes, "My wife said, 'What are you doing? It's black out there. You don't know where you're going.'" Oh, and how's this for a footnote? He was slated to go in that week for surgery on his rotator cuff. One of his shoulders was blown out. And yet he wrestled this boat down to the water, got into it, started rowing. And he said, "I just rowed toward where I thought I saw it go down, And I'm rowing and I'm yelling, 'Anybody, anybody?' And he says, and from nowhere, up over the side of the boat comes a little hand.
No
and he goes,
way.
And I look down, and he goes, I reach and I grab for it. And he goes, and I pull this little boy out of the water. And he says, "Son, are you okay?" He says, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he says, "Was there anybody else?" And the boy said, "Yeah, my dad, but they're dead." And the gentleman said, and he goes, "No, I saw them go down. They're dead." And he continued rowing and yelling until he got no response. And he said, "Now this is Labor Day, but it was so it's not cold, but that time of night, the air was cool." And he says, the little boy was shivering. And I told him, "Sit behind me, put your back up next to mine." He goes, "So I could give some heat from my body to him." And he says, and as I'm rowing back to shore, the little boy is singing songs. He's singing Christian songs that he had learned at Bible school. And he says at one point, the little boy asked him, "Excuse me, are you a Christian?" And the gentleman said, "Well, yeah." And the boy said, "Well, because I'm a Christian," and he's quoting scripture to him. He got him on shore. They called for the emergency crews and so on. As I'm interviewing later, the wife of the pilot, the mother of this little boy and the other boy that went down, she picks up the story back out there. They're in a rural area. And she says, "So my husband, the boy, didn't come home." And she goes, "I thought, well, this is late for a school night." And this gave me chills. She says, and then all of a sudden, 2 headlights turn into the driveway. And she says, "Okay." And then she goes, "But you know what? You can always tell the headlights hit the barn out there, 2 beams. And then as you get closer to it, the beams get smaller and smaller as you're getting close." And she goes, "I saw the headlights and they got to a certain point and they stopped." And she says, "Oh no." And she goes, "I went to the door and opened it, and it was the sheriff's department." And she went out and she says, "The first thing I said, is it all 3? Are they all gone?" And the sheriff said, let's step into the house. Let's step into the house and continue this." And she said, I know why you're here. Is it all 3? And he says, "Well, we haven't found your husband. But one of the boys was rescued and he's at the hospital." And they called and got the ER room and identified this is the mother. And how is he doing? And they said, "Well, right now he's back. He's giving us Bible verses and he's telling us about God and he's singing." That was this little boy's faith. The little boy had asked the dad, or asked the man who had the boat. He asked him, "Are you an angel?" And the man said, "No, I'm not an angel." And he says, "Because you know what? You saved me." It was just, I'm having tears. She sits down at the piano when we're doing this story with the older brother who was supposed to go on the flight and just had said, "You know what, Dad, he decided to stay back." So he's going through the whole, why me? Why do I get to survive? And he talks to us. The daughter talks to us. This whole thing, because their whole thing was about faith, This little boy, they had an outdoor pool that we shot at like a circular above ground 4-foot pool. The little boy, until 2 weeks before was in the water wearing water wings. He was still getting acclimated. Somehow or another, his seatbelt on that plane gave way, or he came out through it, and he knew enough that even though he was just out of water wings, he knew enough how to paddle. And that man rode into blackness and found him. And as we're doing this interview outside, I'm like, this is a story I cannot believe. And I looked up, it was late in the day. There were some clouds, but the sun was behind. And it was one of these things, as I looked up, these golden rays are coming off this cloud. And I knew where this story was going to go. And I went over to my photographer, Paul Quapik, the most talented TV person I ever worked with. And I work with talented people. Paul just retired. I said, "Paul, take a look." Paul looked at me and said, "By the time I put that story together, it came in at over 6 minutes. And in a local TV newscast, a 6 minutes segment. And I cut the story and I said, "This is how long it is." And the producer's like, "What?" And news director's like, "Well, what?" I said, "Come take a look at it." We went back to an edit bay and showed it to them. And they go, run it tonight, run it all." That story to this day still gives me chills. The way that they were able to, I can't imagine the loss. They dealt with it in real time that night, and then in the days, weeks that followed. That one really, I guess it shows, left a little impression on me.
Yeah, I guess it was. That's what that was. So what year was this, and did you ever do a follow-up with the family?
No, I didn't do a follow-up with them, and I can't even tell you I'd have to go back and look at it. It would be quite a while ago. I mean, when you think about it, Denny, as of last summer, I've been retired for 6 years already and just flying by. And so I could look it up and tell you, but yeah, I can't tell you the year as we sit here. But yeah, just an incredible thing. And yeah, that would have been a great follow-up. That's one of the things that all of us in television, on any day that we say, I don't have a story idea, if we would just go back, and we're always looking for what's happening today or what can we preview coming up. And sometimes you just go back and go back to a Tim Burton and say, hey, what's new? I remember being at Tim Burton's house with our second or third follow-up, and we got there, and his parents, who were so wonderful. And again, people of significantly deep faith. And they said, Tim wants to show you something. And I'm now buffering. Okay. Wants to show you something. All right, sure. Okay. And he went and he started and he stood up. He hadn't stood up in front of people. And that's just, and it's like for him, and again, I'm thinking about that boy, young man, tall young man, coming down that hospital hallway when I first met him. And now he could get up and stand. He took Paul and I outside and showed us him running. Now he had to kind of turn sideways to get started, all right, to get the crossover first step. And because this was a kid, we had video. He was a wide receiver in football. And he could just flat out run. And so, yeah, to see that kind of stuff, it is just miraculous. And to cover it, to me, those make, I got to interview Barack Obama. I got to interview a lot of important people. Those kind of stories, to me, always had much more impact.
Did you ever interview anybody, and while you're sitting there listening to him talk, you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, this dude is such a loser, or he's clueless, or oh my gosh, I wish this would end?
Oh, yeah. All the time. All the time. I have friends. I want to be careful here. I have friends who think that they are, that elected people are like really important and brilliant. And I want to be careful because I have some elected friends who I think are really, really bright. I can tell you other times I believe I could go around our TV station and find 8, 10 sharper people than are sitting on city council. Oh, did I just say that? Okay, I didn't tell you what. It was a long time ago, city council. But yeah, I tend to be underwhelmed by elected officials when I actually get to meet them and talk to them, because I always try to do a lot of research and background, so I'm knowledgeable on issues, and also I'm able to call them if they say something, and you can say, well, no, actually, you didn't vote that way on it. You have to do some homework to have that. So yeah, there'd be any number of those that I was just like, let's move along. I got to get a soundbite, and that's all I'm going to get, and we're going to go forward. So.
All right. Deb says the plane crash at Kelly's Island was 2007, and Eric.
Thank you, Deb.
Eric says, as a former news anchor in a couple of markets, I always encountered the guy who had to express how unimpressed with me he was. Did you ever encounter that? The person who almost wanted to fight you because of your job?
No, well, I didn't know anybody had want to fight me. I mean, you do understand that with the territory, you're going to cover stories. They're going to tick some people off. In our business, as you well know, you better have a pretty thick skin, because you can be telling the absolute truth, have every fact right, but if somebody out there feels like it's stepping on their toes, they know you're not wrong. They just wish you guys weren't doing the story. Well, who are they going to take it out on? The deliverer of the story. That goes with the territory. I don't worry about that. I never felt like anybody was going to physically attack me, but I am kind of proud of this story. Do you remember Southwick Mall, folks? When it was Southwick was happening. And I lived out in that part of Toledo. I was very close to Southwick. And I happened to be over there shopping. I think I was shopping for Terry. It must be because I was alone. Otherwise, I would have been shopping with Terry. And we come out of a little store, and a guy comes right up to me, says, "You're Jerry Anderson, right? The news guy?" Yeah, I sure am. And he goes, "Oh, I just want you to know, I think you are the most biased reporter I've ever heard or seen." I say, "Okay. And why would you say that?" And I kind of laughed and say, "Okay, if that's what you feel, can I ask why?" He goes, "No, it's just really clear when I watch you on the interview programs, you're totally against President Bush, and you love Bill Clinton." And I said to him, "Okay, listen, it's the Christmas season. I don't have to do this at all, but I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to tell you something. Young man, I voted for George Bush. I was a Bush supporter. I've always said, if an election is hiring somebody, we're hiring somebody or firing somebody." I'm buffering. There has never been, that I know of, if you put together the resume of George H.W. Bush, this is the dad, folks, okay? Have you ever worked in the legislative branch? Yeah, I was a member of Congress. Okay, great. Do you know anything at all about the intelligence community? Oh, I ran the CIA. Okay, but this is if you're going to be president, it's a global thing. Do you have? I was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Well, but you have to, this is chairman of the Republican National Committee. And the executive, for the last 8 years, I've been one heartbeat away from the presidency. I mean, you can't beat that for a resume for president. So anyway, I told this guy, I said, in fact, when he said, "Oh, it's so clear you were for," and my first line to him was, "Well, that's just how good I am." And he was like caught up by that. And I happened to say that I don't owe you this answer, but it's Christmas time. I said, "No, I supported George Bush personally, but as a news anchor, the interview you saw, I'm not going to just go on there and with a Republican person and say, 'Hey, tell me how great your candidate is.' I'm going to ask you the tough questions that people want to know, that the other side would. And believe me, when I have the Democrats come on, I'm going to ask them just as tough a question. So just so you know, that's my job. That's how good I am. You don't even know." And I had a general manager who Andy Stewart, may ring a bell with you, who one time said, he goes, "Jerry, you were able to do something in talk radio." He says, "You would grill one side, and people, I'm sure, thought, well, he's on. In the next segment, you come back and you're beating up the other side. I mean, not beating up, just asking the tough questions." And he says, somehow you were able to pull that off, where it seems like most of talk radio, especially political radio, had to be over here or over here, mostly over here. And I just think that's what you do. Put it this way. I told somebody, one of my great honors is that I've been approached by higher ranking people in both parties to run for office. Each side. And it's like, luckily I'm smart enough to say no, but it's one of those things where if you're looking one party or another, a political party, for answers, what? Again, they all have their special interest groups that they are going to support on either side, but please don't look to political parties to solve our problems. Right now, they're our biggest problem. As I said earlier, I miss the days of compromise on Capitol Hill. Now it's all this. Now it's all like they must be defeated. No votes for them. Anybody who even thinks about voting with them will be primaried. And that's not where we're supposed to be, in my humble opinion.
All right. Last question. If you were on the air today and you were doing a talk show, what would you be talking about?
I would probably, as much as I just told you, the state of political dialogue totally distresses me. I would be talking about the state of political dialogue. I would be calling out everybody on any issue that comes up. Okay. Is everybody okay with having all 1,500 J6 defendants receive pardons? All right. Because we have on video, we have recordings of high-ranking Republican types who say, well, no, not those who committed violence. Others, yeah, maybe we can talk about, but no, violence against police officers, that shouldn't be pardoned. And the silence is deafening from those folks at this point in time. And I would be trying on that one issue just to cut through the silence. Bob Latta, my congressman, do you support all of the pardons? I'm guessing some of those people should absolutely have been pardoned. It's amazing how many of them actually admitted their guilt. How many were, as I heard yesterday, if you go back and look, a lot of them were very repentant. I got out of control. I would never do this. I just came here for the president. But then when they get that kind of support, then they run it. So I think that I would be asking questions of people who don't want to be asked questions, but that's not new. That's what I've always done. If you don't like my question, you're running away, guess what? I'm probably going to ask you more. And if you choose not to answer, we're probably going to chat about you on the air. I had a guy who you would know well. I think he recently tried to become a U.S. congressperson after being a high-ranking state official. And I invited him on Leading Edge. He'd been on before. And the answer I got back from him was, well, last time I was on your show, I thought you were kind of aggressive. And I'm like, kind of aggressive? If you can't deal with little Jerry broadcaster in Toledo, what are you going to do with the special interest groups and the lobbyists and all? I mean, you can't. And so my answer to him was, I texted him back, have I ever once been unfair to you? And his answer was, no, you were never unfair. Okay, I'll do it. And then I had the privilege of writing back and say, no, it's all right. I already booked somebody else.
Nah.
That felt good.
That's funny. All right, couple of comments. David says, we miss journalists like you, Jerry. Eric says, are you discouraged with the state of journalism and what it's become today? It's so agenda driven. Any comments on the current state of TV news?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do the journalism TV news thing because it all goes together, in my opinion. First of all, I think many people use the term journalist very, very loosely. They are talking about people who are anything but journalists. There was much to be said for having training in journalism, knowing how to tell a story, how to gather facts, how to substantiate a story, how to source a story. One of the things I've told people, first of all, let's start here. Anybody that says cable news, no, that's an oxymoron, folks. That is a contradiction in terms. What you're getting on cable is not cable news. You're getting opinion. It's like talk radio on TV. It's like social media on TV. Everybody's got an opinion that they pass off as news. I have suggested to people, here's something to think about. If somebody errs in reporting a story, it's inaccurate. If they haven't sourced their story, if they can't back it up and prove it, if that person could be suspended and or fired for that, you're probably watching a decent news outlet. If, on the other hand, somebody is rewarded, getting raises, getting all for knowingly misleading people, you're not watching a news outlet. Doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it if that's what you want to do, but don't confuse that with journalism. As far as local TV goes, when I broke in, and again, here we are, graybeards. Myself, well, Denny's a youngster, but Jerry's got some miles on. When I broke into television, we had news at noon, 6, and 11. And within those half hours, 8 minutes goes to commercials. Night on to 22. Oh, weather wants 3. Now you're down to 19. And at least at 6 and 11 o'clock, sports wanted 3.5, 4. you're getting news down to 15 minutes out of that half hour, 16 maybe. And we did that at noon, 6, and 11. In the mornings, there were not only no morning shows. When I started, Gordon Ward, the wonderful, wonderful Skip Ward, Gordon Ward, he did go in. When I was at 13, we were NBC. And so at 7:25, 7:55, 8:25, 8:55, four times, little 5-minute cut-ins. Now, within that, a minute or two went to commercials, and the weather guy did so there was just a quick couple of overnight, somebody got shot, police did this, a fire here, and here's the weather. So not even newscasts. And now we are doing, and again, we're not up that time in the morning anymore, but what they're going on at 4:30 or something or in the morning, before it, this is all before 7:00. And so we have taken news from, I'm going to go ahead and say 90 minutes, and that's giving all the benefit to the noon, 6, and 11, the whole thing. When I left Channel 11, I think we were at 9.5 hours a day. When you count 2.5, 3 hours before the 7:00 show. At 7, we go over to the Fox side for 2 hours. At 9, we're back on TOL. Well, here comes noon. Now let's add a 4, add a 5, which is 1994. And let's do a 7. Let's do a 10 on Fox. Let's do an 11. 9.5 hours. Now, you tell me, folks, do you think the wonderful folks who run our broadcast companies, do you think when they exponentially increase amount of news coverage, hours that are dedicated to news, do you think they add staff in kind in the right proportion to fill those with new, interesting, updated? No, that would cost money. The beauty from their point of view is we've got these people on staff. We're already paying them. Let them do the same, let them do their story again. So when people say there's so much repetition, there's no depth to any story. No, they are feeding the beast, as we used to say. You have to fill black. That's another term. TV without video is black. Oh, they've gone to black, as we've done here a couple of times. You go to black, you got to fill that, and that's what has happened to. By the way, the young people who are working in the business today, I just love them and respect them so much. Folks, they're having to shoot their own stuff. Not only their interviews of other people, they have to turn the camera on. They have to shoot their own stand-up. They have to come back. They have to write their story. They have to edit their story. And oh, by the way, when you get that one, go to another one. And when you get that one, go to another one. In my entire career, when I talked about my friend Paul Kwapik, it was always, that was the model in local TV was reporter, photographer. Reporter, 2-man teams. You went out, reporter, photographer. I would conduct the interviews. When we got back, I would have to write the story. The photographer would shoot the story, and then the photographer would edit the story. And these youngsters today, that they're doing what they're doing under immense pressure just to churn more content. And so I give them a play, but I don't think that the overall state of local television is anywhere close to where it used to be. And that's just not because I used to be in it. It's just look around at what we're doing, how much we're having to fill, and how we haven't supplied resources in kind to fill it. So we can just sit and chat about stuff let's just chat for a while, and we'll call it news or whatever. Jerry said as he sat and talked with Denny for 9 minutes and 2 seconds.
So Sherry wants to know, what was life like as a Bowling Green bus driver?
That would be bus number 3, Sherry. Bus number 3, Bowling Green City Schools. I did that as soon as I got out of television. My last day at TV on paper was June 30th of 2018. I was over training, and by August that summer, Jerry had earned a CDL, a commercial driver's license, with a bus endorsement. And then I began to drive for the Bowling Green City Schools late that August, and I drove bus number 3 for 3.5 years. I told anybody when they asked me about it, I said, yeah, if you're ever in BG and you see bus number 3, that would be me. And if I were you, I'd get the heck out. I mean, wide berth, people, because we're making the big turns, and I may have to hit you if you're in my way. But it was a great experience. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, obviously. I had a bus route that was mostly rural, north and east of Bowling Green. So I would pick up my kids for the most part one at a time, and maybe two at a time if you had brother and sister. Whereas here in the city, Beach is not a big city, but if you're in the city where there's more dense population, you open your door and 12 kids roll up. You go 3 blocks, open the door, 15 kids. I'm picking my kids up one at a time, two at a time. Which means you got to know their name. You got to with me, Denny. Hang with me. I'm back. It was an interesting experience. Most of my kids were good kids in terms of their behavior, although it only takes one or two to make it miserable. And I would have the occasional one or two, but it was a good experience. Our districts are begging for bus drivers. I could help out. It was my district. Both Terry and I are graduates of Bowling Green High School, and I'm glad I did it, and then I'm glad I got out.
There you go. All right, Jerry, we are out of time. I got to go take a nap. That's what I love about, being semi-retired from morning drive. I can take a nap anytime I want. So anyway, thanks for going on. And next time, though, pay your freaking internet bill. Pay the bill, Jerry.
Hey, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't care. This is Spectrum, and I bought because I was doing Leading Edge out of here. Some of you may, this looks familiar. This is my office for Leading Edge. And I bought up to, it got the full gigabyte service. That's what I'm paying for. So if it's on my end, I so apologize. It probably is. And somebody's got a better idea. Jerry's open.
Well, next time we'll just have you in studio when I'm doing my new radio show in March. How about that? You drive up, sit in the studio, chat it up.
I'm excited about your new show, and yes, I'll be checking you out.
Well, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate it. My best to you and Terry and the kids. All right, there you go. That's the franchise, Jerry Anderson.
Yes, and to you, bro, be well, my friend. We'll talk.
All right, looking forward to it. All right. There we go. Okay. We had some glitches. That's fine. It happens. It's technology. But it's always great to hear from Jerry. His stories are amazing. Man, just hearing him talk about the plane crash, just like, wow, that is just stunning. I'll have him on again because I want to ask him if he wants to write a book, because he's got probably a couple of them in him. New radio show starting in March 10th. Looks like that will be the target date. It's going to be noon to 3 on 100.7 The Ticket. What's it going to be about? Well, next time that I'm on either with Sharon or, another podcast, I'll explain what we're going to be talking about. Hopefully lots of phone calls and interaction with people. But if you haven't gotten the Tickets app, get it. Go to your app store, get 100.7 The Ticket, search that. It's the ESPN outlet in Toledo, and I'm going to be on noon to 3, probably starting on the 10th of March. All right, there you go. Share if you care. Thanks, people. And we're done.